request. I hate to do it with committee members missing, but we do have the majority leader here to make a request, and he has a schedule conflict. So I am going to go ahead with the bill request. Welcome to the committee. Back to the committee, I should say.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Tax Committee. It's good to be back with the Tax Committee again. I've always enjoyed this committee. I do have a bill introduction, and its title is, well, you can call it anything you want to call it, but property tax relief. And that's basically all I needed to say at this time.
Thank you. Any questions, committee? Seeing none, no, any objection? We'll make the request. Thank you
very
Mr.
much.
Baker. Thank you. Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also have...
I would say welcome back to you, too.
Thank you. I also have a request for a bill introduction that would be a committee bill. This, many of members have seen before because it is related to the act creating the Dwayne Peasley Technical Training Center. The RS number is 24 RS 2704. And there are two changes from a bill that you've seen before. The most important one is it's asking the Board of County, or allowing the Board of County Commissioners to submit the question rather than directing them to submit the question. We use the word may instead of shall, and the revisor made some technical changes in the description.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Any objection? We'll make the bill request. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Committee, Senator Corson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Introducing a bill on behalf of the Department of Revenue, and it is 24 RS 2901, and it would shift Kansas from a three-factor formula, sales, property, and payroll, for determining corporate income tax liability to a single sales factor.
Committee, any questions? Any objection? Seeing none, we'll make the request. I know Senator Peck has one, so we'll return to that order of business after we continue with the hearing. So, thank you, committee. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. Senator Erickson, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a bill request. It's 24 RS 2920, and it's a tax credit to eligible charitable organizations.
Are there any questions on the bill request? Seeing none, any objection? Seeing none, we'll make the request. I forgot, I apologize. That's what I get trying to do this from memory. There were so many today. Welcome to the Tax Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and that's what I get for hiding in the back. My name is John Wilson, President and CEO of Kansas Action for Children, and I'm requesting introduction of a bill that would establish a state child tax credit, and the RS number is 24 RS 2652.
Are there any questions, committee? Any objection? We'll make the request. Thank you. Senator Peck has a bill request also, committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I am requesting that we have a bill introduction that allows purchasers to pay the sales tax on sales of trailers to the Director of Taxation or the County Treasurer rather than to the retailer. It is it's 24 RS 2855.
Are there any questions? Any objection? Seeing none, we'll make the bill request. Thank you, Senator. Committee will open the hearing back on Senate Bill 377, and welcome to the committee again. Ms. Ginther? Yes.
So I went back and did some homework. So thank you for having me back. I want to talk a bit about comparing Senate Bill 377 to House Bill 2284. I took a look at the flat tax last year in front of House Tax Committee, so I testified about that. And so I'm pulling forward a lot of the analysis that I did previously.
So I'm going to ask you what you did the analysis on, because the bill that passed out, 2284, is not the same as other
No,
legislation.
so I understand that.
Okay.
But, so a flat tax operates very similarly?
It's not a flat tax, but
Yeah, so reducing to one rate operates very similarly. And so what I'd like to do today is to go through the provisions of House Bill 2284 and compare the impact from Senate Bill 377 to House Bill 2284. So House Bill,
if I may, you were actually at we have your written testimony, and we were at the point of questions. So you're going to pick up,
I'll just summarize the written
well,
testimony.
they have the written testimony in front of them.
Okay. So I'm positive on many aspects of the bill because as I testified yesterday, I'm neutral on indexation and I'm negative on the flat tax. So I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I know this is difficult, but we do have a time limit again
Yeah.
today. So thank you. And Senator Holland, you had questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Donna, thanks for being here today. Kind of want to focus on two aspects of the governor's tax bill. I want to focus first on the back to school sales tax holiday piece of that. My first question is that how much analysis have you guys done on those things? I mean, for example, do you know, for example, what are like the top 2 or 3 items that families buy when they go back to school?
Well, sending my own kids back to school, we bought shoes, new tennis shoes for the kids, some school clothes, and then school supplies like notebooks, paper, calculator, things like that.
Did the committee dive into, I mean, do you have just any like rough, wrong?
So I mean, I didn't analyze that specifically.
Okay.
But if you say spend $500 on back to school, it's 0.65% reduction.
So just a couple questions about that.
Okay.
And so one of the questions I've had is that when we talk about the back to school sales tax holiday, my question was this, is that if we have maybe like 1 or 2 items, it seems like families are spending the preponderance of their money on, say maybe like clothing, maybe like tech, calculators, computers, whatever. Is it more efficient just to take the sales tax rate of those top 2 or 3 items to 0 in perpetuity?
Well,
Not hassle our retailers with, lowering rates, upping them back again. I mean, we talk about, I guess I'm just questioning is if there are specific things, is the school sales tax holiday, is that the most efficient way to do it? Or should we just take certain of these categories to 0 and
well, I would say it's inefficient because you're having to change how you're calculating sales tax on certain goods for certain few days. If you wanted to target it to families with children, who are going back to school, give them more of a tax credit for back to school things. That would be an efficient way to, compensate families for having to go out and spend.
I was thinking more just like making the items, regardless of who was buying them, just taking the state sales tax rate to 0.
That would, if you took the computer sales tax to 0 for 4 days or for the whole for perpetuity.
Right. I just wanted your opinion on that.
If you did that, you're going to reduce the sales tax base.
Okay. And a second quick question, then I want to think about property taxes in general. So my second question would be is that on the governor's plan right now, how long is her sales tax holiday?
I think it's 4 days.
Okay. Would there be any issue? Because I do like the idea about us opening up at the same time as Missouri, but I'm also sensitive to basically beginning of month, people paying rents and all that stuff. What if we elongated that sales tax holiday? Maybe made it for a couple weeks, maybe made it for the entire month of August. I don't know. What would be your thoughts on something like that?
Again, the longer you make it, you know, it'll affect the base tax rates. I mean, people, you know, if you do it at the same time in Missouri, you're preventing people from hopping the border. If you do it at a different time, they'll go to Missouri for some shopping, and then the Missourians will come to Kansas at the other time, right? So, you know, people like a sale, and so they'll follow the sale.
Maybe one border where our retails would like for once, I don't know.
Right.
And then let me, one other thing, Madam Chair, to get a different subject. So when we talk about the 20 mil school finance levy, and obviously this would extend that, once again, lopping more off of residential homeowners. Is this bill, though, and once again, I'm not denigrating it because I support the concept. I mean, any relief is any relief for our residential property owners. My question is this bill or bills like this, is this like a fix or a Band-Aid? And what I guess I'm getting back to is you were on the Governor's Tax Commission.
Right.
How much did you guys really drill into looking at the way we assess property taxes across the different properties?
Well, I mean, we in the state levy a very high tax on land relative to construction on that land. So we drilled into, you know, in our tax report, which is online, you can look at how we looked at hypothetical changes in the property tax over time by different regions because it's levied in different.
I understand, but I guess my question is that, did your commission make any I mean, are you guys happy with the way we're currently assessing taxes on, say, farmland versus commercial versus whatever? Did you have a recommendation or thoughts on that?
We didn't weigh in specifically on that, but I would say that there are two things that came out of the property tax discussions in the report. The first is, you know, the exemption was too low, and we called for a higher exemption, so $100,000 is a significant improvement. The second is that, you know, giving LAT VRF to the counties, you know, providing some subsidies to the counties in the form of LAT VRF allows counties to ideally lower their local rates.
I guess just a final question, and I'll knock off here. Thank you for your indulgence, Madam Chair. My point is that with this bill before us, as far as providing residential property tax owners, I mean, it's good, but in essence, is it admitting that basically residential property tax owners are overburdened? I mean, why aren't we giving property tax relief to all the property tax owners? I think I know why, but I want to hear it from you as far as on that, why is it just the homeowners that are getting the relief?
I think that that's where you've seen the greatest appreciation, right? In housing values in the past three years.
You don't think that has anything to do with maybe how the relationship between that and how we're assessing it against the other properties?
I feel that assessing on market value is the sound tax policy. I would strongly encourage the legislature to maintain a tie to market values.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Committee, any other questions? So I do have a couple for you. And he did bring up a good point. The 100K exemption that is only on 20 mil. So it's not complete property tax relief. It's only dealing with the
state part.
The state required 20 mil for K through 12 funding. The funding doesn't come to the state, it goes to the schools. And the state is making up that difference through SGF. The money didn't go away. It's a transfer of the burden from the state general fund off of property taxes. So my question being, it's not addressing the property tax for the businesses and the others. And you said that a third of the appreciation was just homeowners. Businesses had an exorbitant increase in property taxes also. In fact, $1 million building in Iola, Kansas, their approximate property taxes right now are over $60,000 a year. Similar building in Utah is at $16,000. So we do have a problem with property taxes. What would you propose to help fix that? And that may not be an off-the-cuff question, and I want to stay focused on the bill, but if we
Well-
need to add more on property taxes, we need to take a look at that.
Well, so I would say two things about property taxes. So in general, Kansas has tried to balance the burden of a regressive sales tax, a somewhat progressive income tax, and a slightly regressive property tax. By increasing the exemption, you're lowering the regressivity of the property tax. Property valuation, property taxes, I'll be honest, bit of a mystery. It's very complicated in the state of Kansas, but tying it to property values, I think is relevant. And I will also say that commercial real estate in this country is heading into a recession. So property valuations for commercial real estate, because of the change in how people work, that's going to affect those property valuations going forward. So if you would like for me to do a deeper dive into any proposed legislation that you have about property taxes, I will say that the homestead tax break for renters, I think would be very, I know that's been introduced separately, and I think that would be a good policy to also help with increasing rents that people have faced.
Thank you. I'm not going to ask for a deeper dive on that, but what I am going to ask for is that you work with legislative research on the parameters and assumptions for comparing the tax different proposals, if you wouldn't mind, so that we can make sure that we have the right variables and that we're looking at the right information. Would that legislative research?
Well, we literally yesterday did 8 types
did
of
great.
taxes, 8 Kansas and federal taxes to come up with these estimates.
We saw that, but we need to know what those assumptions are in those, because there's some discrepancy within the parameters, and we just want to understand and make sure that we have the right information. That's all we're looking for.
I'm happy to.
We appreciate your work. I know, I could tell you dug in, so thank you very much. Senator Clays.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and apologies if this was already answered. Going back to the sales tax holiday, is it just the state portion of the tax that goes to zero, or does the local tax also go to zero in the proposal?
It's the state, it's not the local.
Okay,
But
so
I
then-
can give you an example. I stand corrected. And Fort Scott has already implemented a sales tax holiday. The city themselves have chose to. This bill takes all sales tax? Okay.
Yes,
I
it is,
stand corrected.
it is truly a sales tax exemption, which would include both state and local sales taxes for those 4 days on those qualifying items.
Great question. Thank you for
Okay,
that.
thank you for that clarification. That's helpful.
And thank you, Amelia. So, any other questions, committee? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You indicated that the single rate tax benefits the wealthy more than anyone else. In Senate Bill 377, the bill that we're looking at, on the elimination of the income tax on Social Security, because of the fact that a person must have a household income greater than $75,000 to pay income tax, could it not be said that eliminating the income tax on Social Security benefits the wealthier seniors versus lower income seniors?
That is correct, because lower income seniors, if they earn below $75,000, their Social Security is not taxed. The problem is if they earn $75,001, then all of that income is taxed.
It is crazy, but that's.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you have a committee and you're trying to fix this, right?
Staying with the topic of those who pay more, receive more benefits, on elimination of sales tax, is it not true that the more a person spends, the greater their tax savings? So those who are wealthy and spend more money have a greater dollar amount in savings than those who are low income and spend less money?
That is correct, but I will point out that low-income households spend virtually all of their income. So a larger share of their income is being paid in sales taxes than a high-income household. Even though high-income households spend more, it's 6 to 8% of their total income, whereas it's 30% of a low-income household.
Madam Chairman, I always appreciate answers that say, yes, that is correct, and then they've got that conjunction BUT, which means they're going to further explain something that makes it more difficult to understand a lot of times. But I appreciate the information you've provided, and I agree with the chair. You have invested a lot of energy in providing information that you wanted the committee to have. And yesterday's testimony that you provided to the committee with the graph on page 4 looks like to me that it just reiterates that the more a person makes, the greater the savings. So any tax legislation we pass, what's already passed, 2284, or what we're looking at in 377, the higher income individuals have the greatest tax savings. But I appreciate your information. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
I would say that's true, but what we need to look at also is that individual that's making 10,000 in that range, they, in the current tax system and the governor's tax system, there's a cliff, and they would pay the 3.1% on all of their income because they're over all of their exemptions. It's that cliff, and in the 2284, they go to zero. So that cliff is removed. I'm really worried about the low-income individuals and what we're doing to them with our tax code. Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here again today. Just wanted to clarify, you mentioned that the funding of the LAVTRF, did I hear you correctly that your assumption was that the entities would then reduce the mill?
Or it would prevent an increase in the mill. So if you give a local community property, if you transfer funds from the state to the local community, then they have the opportunity to keep mill rates relatively flat.
But not a decrease, even though there's...
There could be a decrease. It depends on the amount of money and the needs of the community. So, we were looking at what happens to the hospital taxes. They've gone up by 1/3 since 2014, right? So communities will be using the LATVRF to,
Spend more.
Well,
They don't reduce.
I keep hospitals open, meet the needs of the community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions? I would ask, there's been legislation talked about the state charges 1.5 mil in property taxes. And if we would do away with it and use the LAVTR money to fund that 1.5 mil.
I would have to take a deeper look into the LATVRF.
You take a look at that
Um,
and get back to the committee with John.
But I'd be happy to communicate about what your time frame would be for that.
You have all the time. I would say a week at least. Would that be helpful or not?
Well, we dropped everything to
No, we appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
come up with that information.
I don't think there's any more questions. I would appreciate you, and we'll get you to your class on time.
Well, thank you very much. You just email me if you have any specific questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you for engaging.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
Committee, we'll continue with the conferees. Next up is Abrion Markham. I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Abriana Markham.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. I'm gonna lift this up. Sorry, I want to slow down. I am Abriana Markham, the Executive Director of Topeka Doula Project. I wear many of hats, mom, homeowner, wife, all of the things that kind of this bill kind of covers a little bit. I have somehow identified myself with something in here. And so what I do mainly as my role as executive director, I support families through pregnancy, birth, and right after birth. So I'm with those families at a very important, intimate time where we talk about diaper need. And so today, I'm here to come in support of SB 377 because in 6 hours I was able to help over 200 families with free diapers, and that showed me there was a need in my community. So how else can I continue to help these families? Families are playing tug of war right now between diaper need, groceries, paying utilities. They're trying to figure out which one do I pay for this month? Which one is better off? Which one can I go without? And a lot of times it's a utility bill. I walk into houses that are cold sometimes, so gas gets left out because, well, we needed diapers or because, well, we needed food. And so what I did, I went and bought a month's worth of newborn diapers, which is about 250 to 300 diapers. So that's what you see in this cart here. And what we did were a rough estimate. I did not say I was somebody who knew math. So with a rough estimate, that would save a family $7 a month with just cutting diaper tax. So I didn't include cutting food, grocery tax, anything like that, but just $7 a month. And with that $7 a month, I was able to buy, I'll just tell you. I was able to buy 2 loaves of bread, a carton of eggs, and a half gallon of milk. How much more could I have bought with the sales tax on groceries? How much more diapers could I have bought that month if the sales tax was eliminated, right? The Diaper Network has put out that 1 in 4 families will miss work and or school because they don't have enough diapers to share with their family, to share with their child caregivers, excuse me. And so as I close, I just want to thank you guys for this opportunity to allow me to come and speak to you guys today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Committee, any questions? I have a couple, if you don't mind. So diapers are the big issue for you and that portion of the bill, and I understand that. The legislation that the Senate passed would include up to 341,000 low-income earners in Kansas not paying any state income tax. The current bill that we're having a hearing on does not do that. It does supply some relief in the standard deduction increase, but it doesn't address the low-income earners. So I hope that this committee can put legislation that impacts all. Would you consider a package that had similar language as to 2284?
I want to be honest.
Yeah, sure.
I am just your regular citizen. So
That's good.
I can go and look at that and see. But yes, if we are hitting low-income families, then we're helping everybody, in my opinion. So if legislator could put something in there specifically to that, I think that would be helpful.
I do too. And so we will, thank you.
Yes, you are welcome.
Committee, any other questions? Senator Baumgartner.
Not a question, but a comment. Thank you for being here. And also, in particular, thank you for sharing the reality that we have families where electricity has been turned off that have newborns and small children.
Yes, and it was cold a couple weeks ago, guys.
So to have no electricity means you aren't refrigerating anything such as milk,
Nope.
those eggs that you bought. And it is starting to create a crisis if they're having electricity turned off. Many times they're having water turned off. And in the hierarchy of needs, that's at the very base. So I hope you'll help us in that effort as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Committee, any other questions? Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Committee, we do have some online conferees. Becca Houlihan? Becca, are you online?
Yes, I am. Hello. My name is Becca Houlihan, and I am co-founder of Equity Period, along with my friend Izzy Shockey. So I'm testifying in support of Senate Bill 377. At some point in our lives, likely even at present, we all take prescription medication. Sometimes they're reactive prescribed, but often we take them as a preventative to prevent illness, disease, and discomfort. If we fill our prescriptions in Kansas, they're not taxed, and truly, they shouldn't be. Society is healthier as a whole when we are all at our best. The same could be said for period products, like pads and tampons. They serve to protect both the wearer and the larger community. Period products prevent illness and discomfort, like preventative medication. They ensure people don't miss work or school. However, they are taxed. Taxed at minimum at an astounding 6.5%. These products are expensive to begin with. So with the addition of tax, cost becomes a very real barrier for those with tight budgets. Access to period products ensures safe and healthy menstrual cycles, which in turn means young menstruators go to school and adults go to work. Half of the population, half, needs these products in their pursuit of education and a living. By taxing these necessities so heavily, we are reinforcing a very real inequity in our society. On the other hand, repealing the tax shows that we, as a state, promote gender equity, female empowerment, and basic human rights. Instead of taxing menstruators based purely on their genetic makeup, we ask
Becca?
that, yes?
I know you're about finished, and I'm sorry, I should have interrupted sooner. Could you please not read your testimony? We have it in front of you. Would you just give us a few compelling statements as to why you support this effort?
Yeah, well, 2 in 5 girls experience period poverty sometime in their life in the USA. 1 in 4 teens have missed school due to lack of access to period products. 1 in 4 women struggle to purchase products, forcing them to improvise or miss work/school altogether. 76% of students believe that society teaches a stigma around periods, teaching that they are gross and embarrassing. So currently, Equity Period supports 13 schools with period products, as well as a number of local organizations, and we ask that you please consider this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Becca. Appreciate that. Committee questions? Seeing none, thank you, Becca. David Jordan?
Thank you, members of the committee. My name is David Jordan. I'm the president and CEO of the United Methodist Health Ministry Fund. We're a statewide health foundation located in Hutchinson. Our mission is to improve the health of all Kansans through strategic and cooperative philanthropy guided by Christian values. We focus on access to care, thriving children, and healthy congregations. I appreciate the opportunity to comment here, and I appreciate the thoughtful discussion and questions throughout the 2 days of testimony. We're here just to testify in support of Senate Bill 377. We see this bipartisan bill as a set of common sense priorities that will help reduce the tax burden on working Kansans and put more money in their pockets. Reducing the sales tax on groceries starting April 1st will help save $500 this year for families that are struggling with a high rate of inflation. We know that 30% of new mothers that give birth, families live below 100% of the federal poverty level. So any tax relief on diapers or feminine products will help that family's budget and help those families get off to a healthier start. We know that many seniors struggle, particularly in our rural areas, and reducing taxes on Social Security income will put more money in their pockets. And the child care independent tax credit, doubling that will help families struggling with covering the cost of child care, which is a significant burden on many families. And in Kansas, the average cost of child care is $9,000 a year. So any relief is helpful. I also appreciate the discussion about how we can ensure these taxes are sustainable, of which we know is critical to sustaining services in our community. So I'll leave it there and just thank you all for your time.
Thank you, David. Committee, any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Tricia Ross, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
Okay. Hello, we're Neha Karakam Shetty, Sarah Ye, and Tricia Rastogi of the Flow Forward Foundation, a high school student-run Overland Park-based community project. We've been dedicated to alleviate the impact of period poverty on vulnerable populations in the KC metro area. We support Senate Bill 377 because it eliminates the sales tax on diapers and feminine hygiene products. These products are not simply hygiene products, but rather basic medical necessities, just like prescription drugs. These necessities should be exempt from sales tax, as a tax on menstrual products is tantamount on a tax on being a woman.
We believe that menstrual hygiene management is not just a matter of safety, and it's a matter of dignity as well. For many low-income menstruators in low-income communities, in-kind donations are the only means by which they can acquire menstrual products. Many low-income families are also forced to make the decision between buying groceries for a week or menstrual products. Furthermore, it impedes the ability of both women and girls to engage fully in public life, and that means going to work or going to school. So we believe that Kansas should follow in the footsteps of 25 other states and affirm a strong commitment to the betterment of menstruators' lives across Kansas, public health, and gender equity. We hope girls like us can grow up in a Kansas that supports us and our essential medical needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Senator Clay.
Thank you. It's a question for staff. Same question as last time. Does this bill eliminate just the state sales tax, or does it also eliminate the local sales tax as well?
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the bill would provide a sales tax exemption of both the state portion and the local portion. So it is a complete sales tax exemption.
This is just really interesting based upon what we did with food, that local taxes still apply to the basic necessities of survival, like food, and yet we're seeing two other options here that eliminate the local tax completely. Just a note. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Peck.
Madam Chairman, since the question was asked and then our revisor answered, that brought up another question. I will just ask the question in two parts and let our staff answer. As it relates to these products that the last conferees have focused on, are there streamlined requirements or definitions for this product? And because we were told on some things that if we remove the local sales tax on, I believe, back to school sales tax holidays, then we would not be compliant with streamline. So how does elimination of sales tax on feminine hygiene products, how does that play into the streamlined sales tax initiative?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And there are a streamlined definition of what I believe at the time of this bill's drafting was feminine hygiene products, and the definition used in this bill is the streamlined definition. Within the last week, actually, Streamline published an updated amended agreement that does replace the term feminine hygiene products with, I believe, menstruation catchment devices or something to that effect. So it might benefit the legislation to review those very most recent Streamline amendments. But as I want to note, that was within the last week that Streamline issued that amendment. And they had a provision in the amendment that grandfathered in any state that already had it in their books. But since this is kind of at the same time, we would probably want to review that closely. With regard to the local issue, the Streamline agreement generally requires that the state and local sales tax have the same base. There are a couple of very narrow exceptions to that. One of those exceptions that allows them to have a different tax base is food, and another one is actually energy type expenses. Consumer goods like the feminine hygiene products and the diapers, those are not included within those exemptions. And so to be in compliance with the Streamline agreement, the state and local sales tax base for those products does have to be the same.
Thank you. Committee, any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move to our next conferee. Izzy?
Hello, my name is Izzy Shockey and I'm a proponent of this bill. In light of what was just mentioned, I would like to say that feminine hygiene products are now considered menstrual discharge collection devices by the SST. But with my testimony, I co-founded Equity Period with my friend Becca Houlihan, and we distribute period products to schools. And a metric that was shared with us by one of the school nurses was that 2 tampons would make up for one day that a student misses school. So that's just a simple small number. And we've donated 24,000 pads and tampons to schools alone, and that incurred taxes. So if we bought all of those products in Kansas, the sales tax would be 6.5% alone, which would not include the additional local sales tax. But if there was no tax at all on what we purchased, we could have purchased an additional 1,000 more period products, which would add up to 500 more school days that could be attended by menstruating students. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Izzy. Committee, any questions? Senator Reddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not really a question so much as a comment. I really want to thank all of our proponents for this bill, especially when addressing feminine hygiene products. We often say our young folks are not engaged in issues and policies, and it's interesting to see that they are engaged when the topic is very relevant to them. And all of them working on several nonprofits and trying to meet the needs in their communities and things that they are passionate about. And it's good to see that they took time out of their schedules, and if they're in school, from their schools, to speak to us this morning. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of them.
Thank you, Senator. Committee, that is all of the proponents listed. Senator Peck has a question for you, Izzy, if you're still online.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds like she still is online. Thank you, Madam Chairman. When you, for definition's sake and clarity's sake, when you use the words menstruating student, you're talking about a biological female only, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Senator. So we do not have any other proponents for the bill. I would draw your attention to written testimony. Those will be posted and available online also. Are there any opponents that would like to testify? Seeing none, there is one written opponent. I draw your attention to that, committee. And we do have neutral testimony by Eric Stafford. Did you want to testify? Okay. We're still trying to get to a hearing, so thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. I'm Eric Stafford. I will be fast. First, I'll say I had some flashbacks with a wagon full of diapers, raising twins. That was a tough time. But I do want to be clear that I want to sound neutral today, unlike the AG's office, who was neutral, that bashed one of our bills yesterday. I understand there's a difference between opposition and neutrality, and we weigh those decisions. And I do want to say that there are some merits behind some of the provisions that are in the bills today, that the governor proposed, that you guys have considered, that you guys have passed as the legislature. But I do want to point out specifically the Tax Foundation, their recent article where they talk about the differences between Senate Bill 377 and House Bill 2284. And what they say here is numerous studies have shown a correlation between the lowering of a state's top marginal individual income tax rate and increases in in-state investment, GDP growth, job growth, wage growth, and inbound migration. The key that I want to make for the committee today is we believe if these policies want to be moved forward by the legislature, fine. But ultimately, there's nothing in the governor's tax bill that will result in structural pro-growth changes to the state's tax code. And we believe that we have the resources available, the tax revenue available to make those changes like the legislature adopted in House Bill 2284. And if they go along with these, fine. But all these are further carve-outs of the tax base. And I do find it ironic that there's no local government here opposing the sales tax exemptions. But yet, the food sales tax, don't touch that. We still want our 2.5%, but we axed the tax, right? Did we or did we not? So there's some hypocrisy going on from the local governments about what they want to have and what they don't want to have and what they're behind and not behind. So, but at the end of the day, we cannot ignore the fact that we need to include structural changes to our tax code. We can make it happen and we can grow our state. That is the goal. I believe that there's some goals from the governor's office in that as well. So I'm not here to talk negatively about the merits of those pieces that she proposed. I think there is some positive merit, but I also think you should tie it to pro-growth strategies with the bill. And that is our message today. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Committee, we need to move on. We do have a hearing on another bill. Thank you very much, Eric. Appreciate it. Committee, I'm going to close the hearing on Senate Bill 377 and open the hearing on 306. Amelia, will you give us an overview?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill number 306 would provide for the inclusion of losses from investments in technology-enabled fiduciary financial institutions into what we call Kansas adjusted gross income for income tax purposes. The bill would amend 7932-117 relating to addition modifications for purposes of determining Kansas adjusted gross income. And the provision would provide for the addition to federal adjusted gross income any amount reported as a loss on any applicable federal income tax return arising from any investment, including alternative asset investment in a technology-enabled fiduciary financial institution. And it does reference the definitions of alternative asset and technology-enabled fiduciary financial institution to mean as they were defined in KSA 92301. And in the memorandum I've provided to you, those definitions are there for you to review.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Seeing none, we'll welcome our first conferee, Senator Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee, for indulging me with hearing my bill. I'll make this brief, and you have my testimony before you. Just my overall concern is that you will recall in the 2021-2022 legislative session, the legislature passed through the beneficent TEFI legislation. This was a new kind of financial services entity. Really first in the nation as far as I'm aware of. And I will I voted for the legislation. However, to me, as I started looking more and more into the program and understanding what was going on, I really became alarmed when it suddenly dawned on me that, number one, there are potentially very significant tax implications to the state, particularly the state general fund, that from my perspective were very much glossed over when this legislation was worked through the legislature. Specifically, my first concern is that I do not believe from a tax consequence standpoint that this legislation was ever properly vetted. It should have gone through this committee. Basically, you will recall the TEFI is the rich person's pawn shop. And you will I think also recall that some of the proponent arguments for this is like, well, basically it's a way where, investors, and these are, SEC qualified investors, they can come to the TEFI and they can unload their assets. And make no mistake, they're unloading their assets because they're toxic, they're down, okay, and they want to basically take a loss because there's advantageous tax consequences for doing that. And I do recall in some of the the news articles about this is that certain proponents were saying, well, it's primarily out-of-state investors. Okay, we're not really talking about a lot of Kansas investors. But that's specifically my problem. When you look at comments from the Office of the State Banking Commissioner, he has commented and continues to this day, from what I can see, is that there's not a lot of transparency in the types of transactions and for certainly the dollar values that we're talking about. My concern with this is that I think this program has been pitched at, look, this is a nationwide platform, and it is, make no mistake about that. But the issue we have here is that you have nationwide investors coming in. If they start to sell an appreciable amount of their assets on the TEFI mechanism, they will have beneficial federal tax consequences to their federal returns, and those will probably most likely from the states that they're domiciled in, that those returns will flow to their state returns as well, to thus effectively reducing their state income tax rates. My concern specifically with this bill is that you could have Kansas qualified investors, and once again, we have no window into knowing how many Kansas qualified investors would ever use this, of where, particularly in a situation you have a Kansas qualified investors, make no mistake, these are wealthy people, and many of them are making basically estimated revenue tax payments. And so what you could see, to borrow the words of Ross Perot, a giant sucking sound coming out of the state general fund, where there could be an unloading of the toxic assets on the TEFI. And so all of a sudden you have basically significant outflows of the SGF going back to these Kansas qualified investors. And my only point to the committee is that I'm just raising this as a major concern. Because quite honestly, when you think about how this program was sold to the legislature, obviously there's a percentage of the transaction volumes that gets sent to the Department of Commerce, and my understanding at a high level is that Commerce then would make these rural development economic grants across the state. But when you start talking about the amount of monies we're putting out in grants across the state versus what is coming out of the state general fund, if this thing ever takes off, I mean, this could really be a significant hit. And once again, I can't tell you how big that is, but just beware, the exposure is out there. And I do want the committee to know that I did go to the Department of Revenue. I said, how would you know? How could we estimate? And, you know, they don't know. We don't have the tools. So I'm not here to be the boy crying wolf that there's something, you know, insidious going on right now. But the point is that we have no window. This is not transparent tax policy. And we could find out, you know, at some point, if the TEFI mechanism takes off, particularly to Kansas qualified investors, that this has this has a significant fiscal note that we were never aware of up front. And so with that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. Senator, questions, committee? Seeing none? Sorry. Thank you.
That's fine.
Okay. I thank you for bringing it to the committee's attention. I will do some more research.
Committee, I appreciate the indulgence. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee, I would draw your attention. We have one other written conferee or testimony. Is there anybody else that would like to testify? For, neutral, in opposition? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 306. Committee, is there any other business? Seeing none, we're adjourned.